Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Coleman Gerhardt. A former athlete and motivational coach, I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living out my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
Well, the BTB Project has certainly had a lot of prolific guests and, coming from athletics, entrepreneurship, and really folks that just are an inspiration, not just in my life, but I know will be an inspiration for you as the listener. And today's guest is someone that I've done life with. I did life with him a whole lot growing up in the weeds of Parker, Colorado, to somehow, some way ending up to the same college, man, at the University of Northern Colorado. Go Bears. But nonetheless, I am humbled. I'm excited, and I'm tremendously blessed to have Tyler Ward on the BTB Project. Welcome, man.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman Gerhardt, man. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, man. You're mixing me up here. We were going to go front hat and now you're going back hat, but hey, at the same time, it's a funny thing because there's two people, Tyler, that I get confused by a lot in my life. One of those people is Ryan Reynolds and the other person is Tyler Ward. So it's fun for me to have my own doppelganger on the podcast, man. So how do you feel about that?
Dude, I love that. You're a beautiful man, so I'm happy about that.
I'm just trying to take care of myself when I can, but nonetheless, I know that you're in the sounds of Nashville, Tennessee right now, and that's what you've made home as of recently. And I'd love for you to catch the listeners up to why Nashville and what makes it feel like home, if it's even comparable to Colorado.
Yeah, people ask me that a lot. They're like, where is home for you? I'm like, it is Nashville. Like, I go to Colorado, grew up in Colorado. I love it. Love visiting the mountains, love seeing old friends, love seeing family there. But the type of person, the way I'm wired, lives in Nashville. A lot of creative entrepreneurs, young 20-somethings who have their like hustle mentality. And then those who've made it, who are the 30s and 40s, who started it with that hustle mentality of just like, it's not only a hustle, but it's like a service to others, but also at the same time too, how can we grow a business or an idea and be creative and be supported by the community? So the reason I love Nashville is because it is creative, it's outside the box, and you're supported for ideas that don't really make a lot of sense to people in Colorado. So that's why I'm here.
It's funny because, as you know, I was just out there last week, and I actually had some extended family that lived in Savannah, Tennessee, and we would always fly into Memphis to drive up into Savannah, and that was really my first time hanging out in Nashville. And man, the whole gig worker economy, I was super inspired by it, because there I am as I'm checking out of my Holiday Inn Express. It's the only place I've ever been to where I'm at a Holiday Inn Express and there's live music there, Tyler. Live music at the Holiday Inn, man.
There's live music at the Holiday Inn Express, and if you go down the street to the next Holiday Inn Express, there'll probably be live music. If you go to the Best Western, where there's a motel, there'll probably be live music inside a hotel room somewhere. So it's everywhere, man. It is everywhere. You walk down on Broadway, and I don't know if you've got a chance to walk down there, but there's 16, 20 bars on one side of the street, 25 on the other, and it's just every single bar is filled with live music. And you go, the talent here is insane. It's amazing. And so part of the reason I'm actually here, one is because when I was signed to Sony back in 2013.
I remember that. You want to know how I remember that, Tyler? I got married in 2013, and I was supposed to have a guy come out and sing at my wedding. And I get this text message like a week or so before I get married, and it's Tyler saying, "Hey man, I kind of got signed, so this whole like wedding singing thing ain't gonna happen." Do you remember that, Tyler Ward?
Bro, I remember saying yes to everything in college. I remember going, like, whether it was 16-year-old birthday parties, you know, you play for people like who are 65 plus.
Right.
And then all the weddings, like all of my friends, like you, for example, and then we were like, hey, you want to come out? And I'm like, I would, but I can't
Right.
because I just don't, I don't do anymore.
Yeah. No, I
So
love it, man. I love it. Yeah. So you basically you get signed, and is that what led you there in the first place?
So I got signed, and a lot of the writing for the record that I was making, a lot of friends out in Nashville who are just great writers. So, and it was crazy because I went from one house to the next house to the next house, and all these creatives and writers who've been there for years, and just the way they think and the way they process life and the way it feels like a therapy session. I was like, I really love all of this, and I should probably move here when I want to like root down. And at the time, I was in Los Angeles, and so after the writing sessions, I'd always come visit, and I was like, one day I'm going to move out here. And then I remember in 2018, there was a moment where I was buying, I had a escrow deposit down on a house in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles real estate at the time was really pricey and way more pricey now. But had I known, I would have kept both places. But I remember visiting Nashville to do a write and see a friend. And then there was a spot that was available, and I was like, I'll go check it out. And you walk into the space, and I don't know if you've ever been in those situations, but you walk in to a place and you just know, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to like make an offer on this. Or you meet someone, you're like, oh, this person's going to be in my life. And it's just like a deep knowing, and you go, crap, and it's way too expensive.
Yeah.
And probably the person that you're meeting, whether it's the person you're gonna marry, is like way out of your league. Or like you're gonna take a job that you know you're gonna be like, well, I'm gonna struggle for 2 years, but I know my heart's in it. Like those moments where you're like, I know I'm supposed to say yes to this. And I go look at 3 or 4 other places. I get my ticket back to Los Angeles, and I go, I'm supposed to be in Nashville. So I call my realtor as I'm landing, and I'm like, is the place still available? And she goes, yes. And so I made an offer that was subtracting my escrow amount, and they took it. And I was like, well, this is definitely a divine thing.
Wow.
Pulled out of the deal in LA, bought a place in Nashville, and ironically, that place has become where we headquarters. The company that I started is called Songhouse, and
Wow.
Songhouse, I get to work with like 130 different artists a year, and we'll get into that in a little bit later. But
Yeah.
that place, ironically, that I moved to Nashville, and I just was like, okay, like, and lived there, and moved on to the next place, and became an accidental landlord for a bunch of artists, and then the story goes on.
Yeah. One thing
So anyways, yeah.
no, man, what I appreciate about you, Tyler, is first of all, you're a tremendous storyteller, but secondly, you've always had an ability to rely on your gut and to make decisions based off of passion, based off of what drives you. And it makes me reflect back just to kind of get the listeners up to speed, is when we were growing up together. And I remember, Ponderosa High School, when I was able to watch you play football, both you and your brother, and man, doing the strength program there and trying to get the cool t-shirt that said that I lifted the weights, but you were rocking those shirts all the time, man. Obviously a creature of your craft, and definitely just were a tremendous athlete. But I'd love for you to go back there for a little bit. And, obviously things have twists and turns in life, but being an athlete, being someone that was committed to your craft, that's where it kind of all started for you. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your experience as a high school football player, starting at Ponderosa and eventually ending up at Cheyenne Mountain High School in Colorado.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, you're making me go back, and I love it so much, because it's so funny, because you go back and I don't know about you in your mind or the listener's mind, like when you think back to high school, although it seems so far away, the memories are just right there in front of you, and you're like, oh yeah, like this was who I was, this is who I am, this is part of me, this is part of what I carry into today. And why I am the person I am is because of those little decisions back in the day. Like I'm sure your listeners know this, and maybe new people will hear this, but Coleman, just to reflect back, the inspo of your decision after high school to lose 100 pounds and to come back, and I didn't even recognize you. I was like, is this even the same human? Like I go, that right there, those are moments that even inspire me to go, no, I'm capable. I can continue on when I don't want to. And that's that's so fascinating to me, that those decisions are huge impacts now. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just to kind of take it back, the athletic thing, my dad was such a doer, and he didn't know how to even clap on beat. And my mom was such a feeler, and she is one of the most gifted piano players I've ever known, still to this day. And so I grew up in a house where there's very opposite spectrums. And I knew I had a gift for music, but I never tapped into that because my dad wanted me to play sports. Started me a year late. So I was 19 when I graduated high school. It's a little bit bigger than all the other kids. And so
No
I was
wonder why you were
driving as,
so big, man. That's why
yeah,
I was
man, I
only
was 16.
17. You're 19
Yeah,
year
dude, I
old.
was 16. I was 16 years old. I turned 16 on my freshman, like my last day of my freshman year.
I got
So
you.
like I was driving, I was like, man, I'm a old, it's weird. So he started me late because he's like, I want him, his whole dream for me was to have a college scholarship. And so he started me in football. He always played me up. So when I was a third grader, he put me in fifth grade athletics. When I was in fourth grade, put me in sixth grade. And then when I got to, do you remember the Hawks leagues?
All right, Parker Hawks. I was just gonna say I had Grant Stucker on the podcast, and he was a Parker Hawks guy too, man. So
Oh my gosh. So I just remember, dude, Grant Stucker, my man, dude. Colorado State University.
yes, sir.
So my dad, he put me in 2 years. So I played up. So competition was always challenging for me. And then I remember seventh and eighth grade, like you couldn't go further. So eighth grade, I just felt so much bigger and stronger than everybody because it's like they had to catch up to me. So you give me the ball, and my whole goal was just to run you over. And I was like, this is awesome. And so just carry that mentality in through freshman and sophomore. My dad even changed me 3 different high schools because he wanted to coach me so badly. But I remember there were a couple things in high school that were so significant to me that I will never not acknowledge. And one of those is my dad putting me in sports and teaching me the beauty of practice when I didn't want to. And going, you practice, you play how you practice. And then him having the know-how to go, I'm not going to really coach. I'm going to give the responsibility of Tyler to another coach so I don't have to be the one telling him. And then Coach Summers, who was a weightlifting coach, he followed my dad everywhere, and my dad, brought him to Ponderosa. My dad brought him to Cheyenne Mountain, and the way in which he created a program that kept you consistent through the year, and how he made you want to continue to work and build and grow in the weight room. And I feel like those two things were the beginning of my discipline to blow by the competition in other fields of life. And so having that foundation of just work helped me in my career now more than anything really else. Like, I do believe my talent is good, but the work ethic and the focus and the discipline to finish things and get it done right then and there has put me far beyond someone who's better, more gifted than I am in talent wise. Yeah. So to talk about sports, man, without sports and without that pursuit, I would not be where I am. And the funny thing is, the thing that really shifted my perspective was, and I had to break away from this, and we all do. And when we turn 30, 33, that whole age, you're like, maybe my parents kind of messed me up.
Yeah, right.
And then you have to like unlearn so much, and you go, okay. And so I started seeing the truth, but I remember just wanting so badly to please my dad. And he would always acknowledge those kids who got their full ride scholarships and who went off to schools and really made something of themselves. And I remember a lot of these kids when I ended up transferring to Cheyenne Mountain High School, and a lot of those kids were very just brilliant kids. And so they got scholarships everywhere. And I was like, well, I got a couple offers from like little schools because I was 5'11" and a half. I wasn't 6'2", but I was stronger than most people. But like, that was just a little short to do the D1 full scholarship. So I remember Air Force going, do you want to come here? And I was like, it's a D1 school. I'm going to please my dad. He loves the military. Like, I'm going to Air Force. So I ended up going for 6 months and doing basic training. And I remember during basic training, this is the thing that changed my perspective on everything. And I realized I'm capable of more than I know, and what's carried into my life today, and how we need to test our limits of who we are in order to like really, really, really grow. it was like day 13 in boot camp. And when you go to boot camp and you don't, like, boot camp to me was the hardest thing on the planet because I didn't want to be there. But when you get through it, and I remember lying on the ground, and I called my dad, and like, you had the option of the academy to leave. Like, they weren't going to keep you there. They wanted to weed out everybody, and you could leave up until the end of your sophomore year. And I remember going with day 13, and I had like 2 or 3 weeks left, or 2 weeks left. And I was like, Dad, I need you to come get me. He's like, I'll come get you. I'm like crying on the phone underneath like the table. Like, I get my one phone call for the whole like boot camp training thing or whatever. And then I realized myself, like, I'm quitting. And then I remember, Dad, don't come get me. I just got to get through this at least. He's like, okay, cool. And I hung up the phone, and I got through basic training, and I got the other side, and I went a whole semester. And then in that space, I remember one of the commanders going, he's like, why do you want to leave? And I said, I want to be a creative. I want to make music. He goes, I did that in the past and it never worked for me. And you have your whole future planned out. You got 5 years of this, and then you're going to have a whole pension and everything's in front of you. Why would you want to give that up? And I was just like, because there's something in me that's telling me that this is not me. It was weird. And I ended up getting through the semester, going home for Christmas break, dropping my bags off in the front door and going, I'm home and I don't know what the hell I'm going to do.
Right.
But I'm not going to go back to the Air Force. And I remember calling them and getting like honorably discharged. And then there was a coach who was recruiting me at University of Northern Colorado. Oh. They're like, your scholarship's still here if you want to come. And I was like, cool. So I went up there as a running back. And then that's when I was really introduced again to like music, which there was this, like, I was supposed to be a teacher and I was going to graduate with, I had my majors and I was, and all these things. And there was this calling in me that was so deep and so real and something I could not ignore and turn down no matter what I did. And it was like, say yes to anything music, say yes to, and I was like, I suck too. Cause I know my mom was so good. I couldn't really sing that well. I could play a little bit, but I couldn't really do like anything crazy. I was just like, but I knew I could entertain. Yeah. And at UNC, when we were in the same school, my brother signed me up for this thing called the UNC Idol. So it was like American Idol, but for UNC.
Tyler, I was in the audience that day when you did the Idol, man. And I think what's really neat is I want you to pick back up there in just a sec, but there's one part that you kind of shared recently when we had reconnected about your last year at Cheyenne Mountain. And basically the last play ended, you're sitting on the bench. The game didn't turn out the way that you wanted to. Really, you guys were bona fide, supposed to be state champions that year. And you were sitting on the bench. And I just know in that moment when it came to reflection, no different than some of the things you felt in your athletic life at that moment. But I'm curious, if you guys would have won that game and you guys would have become state champions and you started getting that success, would you still be playing football right now?
Wow. Coleman, don't ask me these questions. I think the one thing that would have done is I would have seen my dad satisfied.
Right. And
I would have gone, it would have felt like we did it. We did it. Like, that's all you wanted was a state championship, and I did it with you. And we didn't do it. And I was heartbroken, but I do not think I would be playing football. Awesome. Because I knew when I was in college, this is what happened, bro. When you go to college and everybody is as good or better than you, you realize really quickly, like, people who love it and who are very gifted versus you who are gifted, but wow, I don't know if I'm going to go to the next level. It's hard to realize you're not as good as you think you are, but like, you're good. And so I was like, I need to find something else that I can shine in, because I'm a running back and I don't even want to get hit.
I mean, it's fascinating to have you say that and for you to be transparent, because, I came from a different situation where I didn't really start taking it serious till I was 14 with tennis.
Yeah.
And my transformational period kind of happened to where my legs were still underneath me. I wasn't burnt out. I was really kind of behind for my time. And it allowed me to have a career in college to where I was actually beating a lot of guys that ended up becoming burnt out because I started later.
Wow.
And it was just, it was inspirational for me because a lot of people that kicked my butt growing up, I was able to hold my own at that point. And I think what's so awesome about your side of the coin and your story, Tyler, is that going back to that UNC idol, knowing that whether you won or lost for your dad, and you're there doing something you're passionate about. And of course you had insecurity because you knew all the work you put in as an athlete, and here you are putting your musician's hat on. But what about that moment at UNC Idol? Did you know that, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be?
Coleman, why are you asking such great questions? This is great. I just, for some reason, there's something in me that observes, as probably being the second kid, it's probably seeing my dad in certain things that I didn't want to be, and seeing my mom in certain things that I didn't want to be, and things that I wanted to be. And just sitting back and observing, I knew I had a knack for connection with people. And I knew that that could come out in some sort of way. It wasn't going to come out in the football field because, it's not measured that way. But I remember getting my guitar, and I remember my brother signed me up. I'm like, you're freaking nuts. Why are you gonna do this? I needed that push. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try it. What do people want? Well, they want familiarity. They want songs that they know, and they just want to be entertained and kind of forget about things for a minute. And I remember going up there and going, well, what would I want to hear? I was like, I just want to hear a bunch of rap songs put together, I guess. So I remember playing an original song and then going to this rap medley. And then I remember the sweet black girl in the back going, oh honey, and everybody standing up, and I was like, wait a second, I could do this. And I remember thinking to myself, there are better singers, but there aren't many entertainers. And I was like, if I could refine this might be a thing. And I was like, let's give it a go. It was natural. It was the first performance I had done, and ended up winning the UNC Idol contest, which I was like, yo, okay, well, that validates this thing that I haven't really put a lot of effort into. What if I put work into it like I did with sports? Maybe we'll move up the chain. So yeah, that was the moment where I was like, I could do this,
Yeah, and that I think is really telling because at that point you kind of overcame a little bit of fear because of the proverbial your brother to do this, to then having success, to then being like, oh my goodness, I can take this athletic pedigree, I can take this work ethic and drive this. And then it became interesting because you were able to come across this whole concept of YouTube, this whole concept of kind of taking this passion of acoustic medleys or making it your own rendition. You come across this We Are the World stuff during the Olympics, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to get my buddies together and we're going to sing this thing. And tell me about that moment when you saw the YouTube ticker, just turn into a slot machine, man, honestly.
Yeah. So this was crazy to me. I remember in college going, okay, I went to the job fair, and I was like, all my friends are going to be enterprise rental, make 35 grand a year. And I was like, dude, that's insane amount of money. Because I didn't come from wealth at all. I got one pair of tennis shoes a year, and both my parents were coaches and in the church, so it was or teachers and in the church. So I whole me was security. Our whole number one foundation is self-protection, was just security, money, make sure you do that. And I was like, oh dude, if I do this music thing, I am so screwed. I should probably get a real job. And then my dad, such a sweetheart, he was like, do you want to try this for 2 years? And I said, yeah. He goes, okay, I'll help you out. You pay for your gas and your meals. You can live at the house, and I'll help you out. But in 2 years, you got to get yourself a real job. And I was like, okay, that's fair. Just give it to me. So I've discovered the YouTube thing, and I was like, let me just put some songs out, and didn't really do anything. It was a couple hundred views, and I was like, oh, I'm famous. And then one day at the Winter Olympics, 2010, man, and they redid a song, We Are the World by Michael Jackson. Oh. And Justin Bieber, Katy Perry were a part of this recreation. And I was like, oh, that's coming out on the Winter Olympics day, as a feature. I'll just get my friends together. We'll record and I just, this black and white, really cheesy version. I was like, all right, I hope it's the same version. I don't know. It's acoustic. We'll just put it out. I put it out the night that they released it. And it was at the time the most searched for YouTube video in YouTube history. And mine was second on the search results. And I was like, wait a second, this is crazy. So I was like, I got to start doing this. And just practice, you get through practice, you're happy, You work, you work, you work. And for most musicians, they only go when they're inspired. And me, I'm just like, well, you got to go even when you don't want to. That's what I mean, I remember Coach Summer saying, when you get stronger is when you show up to the gym and you don't want to. And I was like, okay. So I remember going, I'll just take that mentality and I'll just apply it here. And I'll take all of these hip hop songs and songs that are releasing, and I'll just start doing my acoustic versions of them the same day they came out and release the video. And then I figured out a way to approach all of the different publishers and talk to them personally and get licensing to be able to release my own songs, and figure that whole situation out, and actually kind of changed the cover game when it came to like artists that were like, oh, Tyler Ward's going to do a cover of our song. We know that he's got a lot of views. He can sell it the day after our song's released versus waiting that 30-day period. So they made the exceptions because I was very proactive. And I remember Justin Bieber had like Girlfriend come out. I remember that song came out and I heard it at 9 p.m. or it came out. So in Colorado time, it was 10 p.m. and then Eastern time it came out. And I was like, I'm going to cover it and do a video and release it. And I remember learning it, playing it, recording it, doing a video of it, editing the video, editing the audio, getting the audio mix, sending it to my guy in the UK to put it online. And that whole song was ready to go by 9 a.m. the next day with the video. So he didn't even have a music video out, but I had this acoustic version. And then because I was able to sell and had permission, like it was doing, a lot of downloads. So I remember and this was in iTunes days where it was $1.29 a song. And because I'm independent and because I have publishers' permission, they're getting paid a certain percentage. I'm seeing about 86% like of the gross revenue, which was crazy. So I remember my dad came downstairs a year and a half later and he was like, all right, man, it's time to get a real job. And I was like, okay, Dad, hold on. Let me start. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. So he goes, it's time to get a real job. And I said, all right, Dad, how about this? Because he didn't really know what I did. He was just like kids making music in the basement. I said, how about I buy your house and then you move out? And he's like, what? And so I bought his house. He's like, what are you doing? He packed up, he left, and I turned that basement into a studio and started working. But it was crazy to me because I was one of the first independent artists who was able to create a living online, a very, very significant living. I mean, I went from like $100 a weekend, like $200 weekends with tips though, my whole life up until a place where it was like, I don't know what to do with this amount of money. Like it was crazy. And then started investing and started buying some properties, then trying to figure that whole thing out, then moved to LA. And now I have like, 6 or 7 different homes. And it's like, the money is there. I finally like enough to me was if I can make enough money to buy a car,
right,
I've made it.
Right.
And I bought a car, baby. I bought a car that I wanted and I made it. And everything after that has been 100% gravy. And I just feel very blessed after the fact. So, and then with that came a lot of just like, oh, now I'm in a textbook at a music school. Like they're like, oh, yeah, we heard about you today. I read about you in class because of the way in which you changed the game when it come to like the licensing thing and all this stuff. And I was just like, yo, this is insane. Like the things that I was just doing in my dad's basement, I didn't realize the impact that they'd have in like, 12, 13 years later.
Now, first of all, just it's remarkable to hear how really simple the concept is, right?
Yeah.
You love music. People love music. A song comes out with names that are far bigger than Tyler Ward. And you're passionate about those people. We all listen to the same people. And you just create this ripple effect of consistency. And what I want to know, man, is you kind of figured out the algorithm. You started having the success. At that point in your life, when, you realized that you could buy your dad's place, how was your alignment at that point between you, yourself, and yourself? Because listen, if it were me and this happened to me, all right, so I appreciate you condemning me for my ability to lose 100 pounds. Thank you, man. I won a contest at UNC as well. It was best dressed athlete. They wrote an article about me in the Greeley Tribune about basically wearing Guess jeans that I ended up, putting bleach all over them and wearing a leather jacket and having these big old diamond earrings and Versace sunglasses. I became someone a little bit different than who I really was on the inside, to be honest. And I just want to know, man, like when you were able to start seeing some of the success, I mean, how in the world did you keep it together between the years?
Yeah. Okay. Another great question. I have realized this looking back, and I'm still unpacking this. There's two people in me, right? There is the at night by myself, still sensitive, very like, oh gosh, like don't look at me because I'm not enough. And then there is ego building Tyler, who's like, nah, I'm good, man. I got this. And like, I want the attention and the money and then the success and the fame and the recognition. And those two, as one grows, the other gets a lot quieter. And with that, you start making decisions based off of, well, how can I? And it actually starts really pure. Like it started pure. Like I loved music,
Yeah.
and I didn't anticipate making it at all. When I started getting like 2 or 3 thousand followers a day, I was like, this is not real. Like no.
No.
And so you create a branding, and I feel like this is just, and people are gonna, I feel like 10, 15, 20 years from now unpack this because everybody's a brand now. And so I created a brand where I had to look and appear a certain way, which was part of me. But I was like, if I'm not that, and if I shift or change, or if someone doesn't like this or something like this, like I everything falls apart. It's like you can't really be your true self, because if you're your true self, everything else goes away. And it's so funny. I made a living off of other people's music. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
So like that also is like, well, what's my own voice? What do I want to say? Well, I want to say something similar to what these artists are doing. So when I made my own original project, was it really what I wanted to say? Or was it just following a system and or formula? So like
Mm.
as things, it's so you the distinguishing like alignment of who I am becomes greater and greater and greater separation. And I like know, like, when you're out of alignment. But like it didn't matter because I was just enjoying myself. I was like, I'll get to that later.
Right.
Then when you start lying to yourself and other people, and it just takes a toll.
Yeah.
It takes a toll, a huge toll. And then when people start finding out the truth about you and about what you're doing behind the scenes, and one thing that you're saying up front, you just go, and then I don't know, it explodes your life, but it's like the greatest and worst thing that could ever happen, because you lose. It's like what they talk about, like you lose yourself to find yourself.
Yeah.
And I lost everything that I built because I wasn't honest with people through and through, which felt like I lost everything that I built. But then looking back, I didn't really. And it's so funny. Can you hear the people
I
cutting
love
the
it, man.
yards? Or
Yeah, you're good. No, you're good.
okay.
Don't worry about it. Well,
And I think the biggest piece of, whew, man, it's been a journey just coming back to my true identity and who I am outside of all of the success. And
let me give
what
you
I
an example, Tyler, of
please,
where
please.
throughout your career, okay? So you and I have been fortunate enough to maintain touch. We've been
Yeah.
supporting each other, and I'm forever grateful for that. But let me give you an example of where when you were kind of coming out of not just being a cover guy, but doing your own original music. There's one particular song that comes to mind that I believe was not only your true authentic self, but I can't imagine how many lives it impacted, how many lives it encouraged, it helped, it supported. And that song was The Rescue.
Wow. Yeah.
I lost
Yeah.
my mom when I was 20 years old, went to 4 rehabs, lost her battle to addiction.
Yeah.
And I remember that, not only that song, Tyler, but the project that you did where you kind of reached out to your fans and said, hey guys, I need some help with this. And people responded like no other. Messages on their hands, showing what they're trying to be rescued from, showing what they are battling. And I almost feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, man, I almost feel like you wrote that song to yourself.
Yeah. Coleman, I wrote that song. I remember that was the hardest song I ever written because I spent so much time with it. I knew there was something special about it. And it's so hard to get to those places as a creator, to be so genuinely authentic with yourself and go, no, this is This is me. And there were several moments in my career that was true, but like, it's so hard to get to those places because it's like, you don't want to be seen, man. You just want to be protected. And the minute you're seen, then people can actually judge you. But the special thing about that one was that was me, and it was embraced, and it was the reason I had fans that kept coming to shows. Saved a lot of people's lives, so to speak, but it gave them the words that they needed to hear at the time that I would like to have someone say to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I just resonate with that now, because before we hopped on, it's, you know, talking about athletics, talking about coaches, talking about mentors and inspirations in our lives.
Yeah.
Having an ability to go back in some of the situations that we've been in to where we could be the voice now that we needed back then to people that now, right? And I just kind of want you to maybe frame this. Listen, you're a human being. You lost yourself a little bit, but you always had these moments with your original music to where I believe you tapped into your true authentic self. Knowing what you know now from those two parallels, how has that prepared you to who you are now?
I think the biggest thing I learned from that, and through the success and the failure and just the suffering internally what no one knew, was I would say to my younger self, or just to anybody listening, is like, always genuinely, there's a reason people say, hey, tell the truth. The truth will set you free, yourself and other people, regardless of the consequences. And so I remember lying to myself so much my whole life, but then when I tapped in, I was true. It had this massive impact. And ever since, there was a moment in my life where I hurt a lot of people, and I wish I could have taken it back, but at the same time, too, I'm really glad I went through it. There was a decision I made in 2017 where I said, I will no longer lie regardless of the consequences. If it gets me ahead or behind or whatever, I will just always tell the truth, whether it's taxes, whether it's a human, whether it's a girlfriend, whether it's a family member. If I'm asked, I will muster up the energy to tell the truth. And after that, my life, I felt like there was peace. And I would trade everything for that piece of advice if I like knew it in my bones, but I didn't know it in my bones back then.
Wow. And I think that alignment after 2017 and as you've moved forward to where you are now is really telling, because the thing that I know of you is I know that football became something that sometimes felt like a burden. I know you were coached hard. I know that you put a lot of work into it. But man, I believe you loved, I repeat, loved giving back and coaching yourself. I believe you got to tap into it a little bit in athletics, but what is so awesome about you, man, is here you are, Songhouse. And what are you doing? You're bringing in people that have the same entrepreneurial spirit like you, the same passion for music like you, people that are trying to figure it out. And you're bringing them together through a concept that, through your platform that you've created in the trenches, gives these folks an opportunity to do something extraordinary. You're a coach now, Tyler. How do you feel about that, man?
It is makes me tear up, man. Oh, you're good at this.
And first of all, before you respond, I couldn't be more proud of you, because that type of encouragement in people's lives, heck, man, when I saw you on the Kelly Clarkson show a little while back, I saw an artist like her who has the fame, who has the stardom, respond emotionally to what you guys are doing because she wished she had it too. And that, my friend, not only has to feel good, but when you're doing something in alignment and you get to tap into this coaching piece, I'd love for you to tell the listeners about what you're up to with Songhouse.
So after my window of what I would consider a long lesson of trying to be a star, there comes a time where you go, there's nothing better in life than to see someone live into their full potential, and to see someone go, wait, I can do that. Because I remember when I was like, oh wait, I can do that. There's nothing better than for you to get a hold of that energy and to give it to someone like you, like you coach someone into that. You wake up excited, you feel purposed, you feel like you're giving back, but also like they're giving you so much more in return because you're like, wow, like all these experiences, the success, the failure are actually adding up to seeing someone live out something, a calling. And so for me, Songhouse, it is my blood, sweat, and tears, and soul and heart. And it is a place and space where I wish I had something like that, a community where we could come together and just make art and not feel judged and welcome everything from, I don't care if you're 50, you're 63 or you're 17, like you're a writer, you got a story, let's say it, let's tell it, let's share it, and then let's let the cream rise to the top. We have worked with over 150 different artists in the last 2 years, and we've seen a couple artists get signed, a couple artists go on tour and do their own thing, a couple artists learn that they don't really want to do this, and it's just been a cool place of just testing, and you get to compete in a way, but also it's like you're supportive, so it's like a team where if someone wins, everybody wins, but at the same time you kind of want to be the star, and I don't know, it's just cool. And then people come to you and they listen, and there's a lot of respect, and your words have a lot of weight. So I feel, you asked me originally, how does it make me feel? I just feel so honored. Like honored is like the human English language does not do it justice. But the one word that comes to mind is an honor to wake up and just to be a part of people's lives like that.
Right. Yeah. And being able to kind of listen to some of the results of this concept, right? I mean, my understanding is these guys get a few words and get a little bit of time and try to create songs. And if it's something that makes sense and goes viral, you support them, you help produce it. And there's one particular artist that, I don't mean to name drop, but it's one person that I'm like, man, like this is someone that kind of embodies your whole journey. Like I kind of, when I hear her sing, I'm like, man, this is like, I can hear the raw emotion of your journey when I listen to her sing. And that's Kendall Inskip. I mean, that young lady is crushing it. And I'm just curious, based off of some of these artists you're working with, do you kind of see yourself like as they are doing it today? Or do you kind of, everyone's original, everyone's trying to, do their own thing, but it's got to be kind of telling to you to see these 120 artists and be like, this kind of reminds me of myself back in the day.
I think there are a few people in the space that remind, like you, there's like entrepreneur blood, and then there's like talent.
Yeah.
And then there's like talent and entrepreneur blood. And then there's like, and you can see it all. Like you get it. Like when you see talent, you go, oh my gosh, there's something magical there. I want to be able to cultivate that and let them know that they like, make sure they understand how gifted they are without letting them know they're gifted. And so we'll let the results do the work. And the Kindle is a great example. She actually was so successful. We asked her, we're like, you're like an alum now, like go do your own thing, come back if you want to. And she's like, yeah, you're right, I don't want to be the face of Songhouse forever. So it was a really special season with her. She had 14 plays a day on Spotify, and she was on The Voice 2 years prior, and she was doing 5 shows a night. And it was just like she was trying to do it, and then she came in and wrote 2 songs. We had this momentum in this thing, and one of the songs came out and it skyrocketed her. She does 96,000 streams a day. Jeez. And she's all over the place. And she was on tour with an artist, and she's, I mean, but her song, her biggest song, which is Honest, which I got to produce and help write. It was written by a guy who's 63 who had a story. He's like, I've had this story for like the last 20 years. I never know where to give it. And he was like, if I'm being honest, I'm not being honest. And he's like, no one wanted to write that song. And then she took it. And it was just like this cool moment where it's like, oh yeah, we're doing the right thing because everybody's coming together and aligning. And that's where the magic takes place. And the minute you're fake and the minute you're trying, like you could try things. You should always try things. But if it's not like true to your inner world, like it's not going to sustain.
Right.
So we're just very, very, very particular on like, if it's true, do it. Now we've elevated, like we've gotten to a place where now we're telling stories alongside of just doing the songs. But if the song goes viral, man, we cut the song, we release the song, we let people hear the song, and the world gets it, and it changes these artists' lives, man. It's crazy. Especially these days. Like it's all social these days in the entertainment space. And the fact that I got in like 12, 13 years ago, I'm like, what in the world? This, like, there had to be a grander plan that I just did not see. And I can't wait to see in 10 years.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like I'm in the middle of it. I wake up excited going, do I really get to do it? Am I still doing this? Like, I thought it was gonna end that first 6 months. So I was like pinching myself, and it still hasn't ended. It's wild, Coleman. And I think it all has to do with listening to that like still voice when you're quiet and you're like, I need to say yes to this, and this no one else will get it but me.
Mm.
And like you'll get judged, and people are like, "Wow, you're freaking crazy." And then you have a couple supporters, but when you listen to that and take a risk, like it for me, I'm an example of it paying off. I cannot even tell you, like, if I did not say yes to the Seattle thing and out of fear said no, like I don't know where I would be, bro. Like truly. And that was just one moment of saying yes.
That's so unbelievable. And I think it brings us to a good point of, yes, you're talking about how exciting the next 10 years are going to be and what it's taken to get to this point. But let's be real here for a moment in time is, listen, you and I got to reconnect a couple months ago, and you had to say goodbye to your dad. And as I mentioned, I had to say goodbye to my mom many years ago myself. And I remember a moment at this point, Tyler, she was deemed clinically brain dead. She was in a hospital bed, and I got to spend
Gosh.
some time with her, man. And everyone told me that, hey, you can go say your goodbyes. You're not going to get much from her. And I said, all right. So I go in there and put my forehead on her forehead and said some scripture to her and just told her I loved her. And it was hard for me to be affectionate with my mom, Tyler, because of all the hurt and resentment that I had for what she did in my life. But at the end of the day, I loved her. She was my mom, right? And so I I told her some scripture, and clinically brain dead, she opens her eyes, starts crying, and she whispers to me, "Go help people." So this whole BTB project and where I'm at right now, Tyler,
Wow.
it was birthed from a moment in time where I was assigned another mission in my life, and that was to live on the legacy of my mother. And with your dad,
Whew.
I was incredibly humbled to not only be there with your family to celebrate his life, but knowing the next 10 years and what excitement you have right now. What does putting on the bandana and what does living on his legacy mean to you?
I think it's when he got older and he was diagnosed with cancer, he became more of who he's ever wanted to be.
Mm,
And that was a sensitive, loving, kind,
yeah.
not worried about results,
Yeah.
just wanted to be with you kind of person. And I think for me, that's all I ever wanted from him. And I didn't know how to express that until a couple years ago. And, looking back as you get older, you go, man, we don't have a lot of time. We think we're going to live forever.
Right.
And you realize like love is the only important, really, truly, genuinely important thing. And I think his legacy, if I was to carry that on, is this, I mean, his dedication and his sincerity towards his faith and like
Yeah.
who it like boils down to loving other people. And I think with even the Songhouse space or my own heart and just my interactions in day, it's just like one thing I did learn from him is I don't want to hide. And he hid until he was the last couple years. And then the minute he was free of not hiding, he was an amazing, amazing human. And so living the legacy to me is, again, it's always just telling the truth regardless of consequences. And then it's just being with people.
Right.
Gosh dang it, Coleman. I'm
I
freaking in a
know,
church
man.
parking lot that I don't even know. I'm just
Hey.
bawling and just,
But this is what's
the mower right there is looking at me, bro.
special part about this, Tyler, is you've been able to, as you opened us up today, is you have a way to connect and to communicate with people, right? And I think it's so telling with how you have represented yourself, how you've represented your family, and where you're going moving forward. And that leads me to one last question, man, is that you probably have already answered this, but let's get your feedback on this. Is, let's say you went back and found a 16, 17-year-old high school football player that's sitting on a bench that just lost the game of their life, right? And it was a close game. They're down in the dumps. And here you are, man, you're at maybe a high school in Nashville, and you see this kid, you get an opportunity to walk out of the stands and sit on the bench with this guy. Knowing what you know now, Tyler, what advice would you give him?
Wow. Give me a second, because geez, Coleman. Question king, man. I would say life comes as a teacher, and you should feel this and be with this and know the sun's gonna rise tomorrow, and it's okay to let it go. But feel it. I don't know. I don't know. I would just be with the kid, and I'd be like, "You good?"
I love
Because this
it.
hurts.
I love
Yeah.
it, because I think where you've come in your life and where I can relate to it, it's sometimes we're better off just listening than we are saying.
I don't know if I'd say much, man.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think I just ask, like, "You good? This sucks." Yeah, I get it.
That's it, man. And then you listen and
I
you
think
be in
that's what
that
I'd
moment.
say.
Yeah. And see,
And
there's
then I
lots of
give him a
folks.
hug, and I'd be
Yeah.
like, "All right, man, you want to go grab like a steak dinner? Cause probably hungry."
Absolutely. No, Tyler,
Oh,
what an unbelievable honor it's been for me to walk through your story, to learn some perspective, to know that there's exciting ventures ahead. And, from the bottom of my heart, I couldn't be more proud of you as a friend. I couldn't be more proud
whew.
of you of the mentorship that you've instilled in a lot of people's lives. And more importantly, man, for taking a little bit of your precious time to chat with me on the BTB project. Thank you, man.
Coleman, thank you. Man, I love your heart, dude. I gotta process this. This is good. Thank you, Coleman.
Of course, man.
You're told I'll be your heart.